You're joining the 163rd episode of the People's Court. It's Saturday, June 14, 2014. Today, we'll be talking about the finals, Carmelo Anthony possibly joining the Heat, and more from the Sterling saga. Court is now in session. And we don't have any theme music today, so what can you do?
Adam can beatbox.
Adam can beatbox. Why don't you hit it up for us, Adam?
See?
That's perfect.
Can beatbox.
We apologize for starting the show a little bit late today, but I think it's going to be well worth the wait because we get to hear Adam cry about his Heat getting destroyed in the finals.
Absolutely dismantled. It's been disgusting. And it's because it's fine if they play well and lose. I'm fine with that. The Spurs have been out of this world. Absolutely out of it. They've been playing. Well, Game 3 was ridiculous. Game 4 was only slightly less ridiculous. They are playing at a level most teams will never approach. But I've just been really unimpressed with the Heat. They've got no desire, no spark, no energy. They clearly don't want it as bad. I mean, I hate to use that phrase because it's a stupid phrase, but they clearly don't want it as bad. They just don't. And I'm really disappointed by that. They look exhausted, they look totally gassed, and I'm not enjoying it. I like watching the Heat compete. They're not competing at all. And that's just sad.
If you want to contact the People's Court to talk trash to Adam, you can do so by calling us at 424-ADJOURN. That's 424-235-7633. Hit us on Twitter at People's Court FM or Adam directly at Adam C. Blodgett. Either way, you'll be able to talk all the trash you want to Adam because, as we mentioned, the Heat have really looked like a team that's played the most games ever in NBA history in a 4-year span. They look like they're just out of it, like they have no energy left.
Yeah, I'm going to use a different take on what happened. So, Steve Kerr, a long time ago, said that it is mentally and physically draining to make it to two straight finals, let alone 3, let alone 4, as what Miami has done. And we talk, and this was my question mark on the team when the season started. And so throughout the playoffs, they literally coasted through the majority of it. They got a little bit of a push from Indiana, but you could tell that Miami was easily way better than the Pacers. So you get to the finals versus the Spurs, a team that a lot of people thought was better than Miami this season, even if ever so slightly. So you get Game 1, and Game 1 is for the most part back and forth. And even though it turned into a 15-point Spurs victory, it's not until that good fortune goes the Spurs' way, that being fortune in the way of LeBron James' muscle cramps, where he misses the final 3 minutes, and that's where the Spurs get separation, go on a run, and close out the game.
I think you mean where Greg Popovich's devious planning, diabolical planning comes into play. That was no accident. Everybody knows that was no accident.
Okay.
Good fortune.
Well, that's all right. Well, that's coming from a jaded Heat fan. So they respond to that. LeBron specifically, and the team in general respond to that in Game 2, where they're able to pull out a victory. So they have they step up to the challenge. Game 3, you already mentioned the Spurs in the first half were ridiculous. They scored 41 points in the first quarter. They at one point were 19 for 21 from the field. That's unheard of. That's a fluke. And they have a 20-point halftime lead. Miami, again, responds to that by cutting that lead to 7 points. Well, but then at the start of the fourth quarter of that game, the Spurs go on the run, and they
Apparently I just died. Okay.
I can't hear Adam now. Oh, we lost Adam though. Did he just sign off? Just to sign off? Well, yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, it shows that the microphone here is working. It shows that there's sound coming from this area.
Yeah, everything that was plugged into my laptop
is currently off. But I unmuted myself here, so theoretically people can hear us there. Hey Donnie, I know you're watching. Please put a comment on there if you can hear us. We're just trying to make sure we got everything set up. Possibly we may have lost all audio, but we're not sure. So if you could let us know, that would be fantastic.
We suck again. I give up.
Anything? I don't know. Well, I'm going to continue and assume that this thing is still recording.
Yeah. So basically, my point succinctly was that you're now starting to see the mental fatigue, the fatigue of Miami, like you said, playing most games in a 4-year span that we've been waiting to see since the playoffs started, and that's where it shows. The Spurs have come at them multiple times, and every time they
Wait, it's coming back? Wow. This has been just fantastic.
Hey, you wanted to suck like the Heat? We suck like the Heat.
we are really bad. Okay, well, I think we're back.
I'm back.
Adam's back.
Where did I drop?
I think at one point all three of us dropped off at different parts, and I think we're back now. Lamont was just saying once again, reiterating why he thinks the Heat are struggling in these finals.
On top of the Spurs being otherworldly, like Adam said, the past two games in Miami, every time what we're seeing for the first time in the playoffs is a Miami Heat opponent give them multiple challenges, and they just don't have it. They don't have it to respond, even though I still think that they are willing. They've shown signs where they've tried to at various times throughout the series. Thursday night really being the lone exception to that.
Yeah, I still think that the real big issue here is nobody expected the Heat to get this far. Well, maybe not nobody, but it was a surprise to me at least that given the fact that they're trying to accomplish something that hasn't been done in 30 years, which is get to the finals in 4 consecutive seasons. I don't think they would have gotten there if the Eastern Conference was even close in competition to the Heat. Like, we felt that Indiana was going to present that opposition for them, and they just fell apart. And after that, well, it's like, okay, well, the Heat are going to make it by default.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And now that they're playing against some real solid competition, we're seeing the fatigue set in. We're seeing that despite the fact that Dwayne Wade sat out 25 games this season, that they're not quite as deep as they have been in the past. You're not getting the same production out of guys like Shane Battier and Chris Anderson and Mario Chalmers, those guys off the bench, because those guys have been through a lot of playoff runs too, and they're not used to playing this many games. So that's what I think the real big issue is.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the Heat took the East by default. They just happened to be the last team standing. They backed into the finals. I had the Indiana Pacers picked to beat them in the Eastern Conference Finals this year, except Indiana fell apart. Indiana completely self-destructed in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. So the Heat find themselves in another NBA championship shootout, only San Antonio has much younger legs. I think that's all it boils down to at this point is just sheer exhaustion. The Heat have 2 players that could retire this summer in Ray Allen and Shane Battier. Shane Battier is confirmed as retiring. He's going to become a college commentator for ESPN. Ray Allen is probably going to retire this summer. And we haven't seen that role player step up the way that Chris talked about either last week or 2 weeks ago. The Heat always have a magical role player step up and make a big impact, and we have not seen that. In fact, we've seen the opposite of that. We've seen not Mario Chalmers, but Wario Chalmers, who has been nothing but a drag on this team. He can't shoot. He's shooting 25% for the entire series. And now he's detracting now, especially with these shenanigans like elbowing Tony Parker in the ribs. Like that is not acceptable. That's not acceptable for a championship team. That's not acceptable for a championship player. Mario Chalmers needs to step up in the way that he has always done, and he's not doing that right now. And so that lack of role player, that lack of bench support is really being exposed by the Spurs, who are the exact opposite of that, have solid bench support, have role players playing solid minutes, and really getting contributions from Danny Green, from Patty Mills, and especially from Diaw and and somewhat from Splitter. But the Heat need their role players to show up. They need something out of Rashard Lewis. They need something out of Ray Allen, and they definitely need something out of Mario Chalmers. And if they don't, it's going to be a quick 5-game series. And in fact, the stat that's haunted me the most is that the Heat are essentially 4 missed free throws from being swept. 4 missed free throws. If Tony Parker and Tim Duncan make those free throws in Game 2, I don't think that the Heat even make it to Game 5. That said, I think the Heat can still take it to 7. I think that they have a pride game left in them. I think Sunday is a pride game, and I think they have one pride game left in them. They can get back to Miami. They can bring it back home. They might even eke it to Game 7. I think it's possible.
This is where I want to talk to you about the format, since you bring that up.
Right.
Because in the past, Game 5 would normally be played at the team with I won't say worst record, but the team that didn't have as good as a record, right? So the Spurs have home court advantage.
Yeah.
So typically, in however many finals before this one, Game 5 would be played in Miami. But because of the format change this year, Game 5 goes back to San Antonio. And I think in this particular situation, with the Spurs up 3-1, that gives San Antonio a distinct advantage because their guys, all their role players that we've talked about and how well those guys play, they play that much better at home. Guys like Danny Green, Patty Mills, Thiago Splitter, those guys, when they're at home, they're different players.
Yeah.
So I think the format change is going to hurt the Heat this year because of that, and they might get. Like if this game was in Miami, then I'd have more faith that they could win Game 5, potentially win Game 6. Like you said, to still force 7 games.
Yeah.
This game being played in San Antonio, I'm not sure, Adam.
I'm not sure either, but I think they have a pride game. I think LeBron particularly has a pride game. He doesn't want to be swept out again by the Spurs, not in 5 games. He wants to take it back to Miami, give them a chance to push it to 7 games. If they can get to a Game 7, it's anybody's series. That said, they'd have to show up for that, and we haven't seen them in the last 2 games. The Game 1 is a tough one to swallow, given that LeBron just shut down, his body shut down. I won't call it cramps because that, I think, belittles the incredible physical trial that he went through. Using the word cramps isn't appropriate to me. But Games 4 and 5 have been all Spurs. There's been no Heat whatsoever. There's no. It's I'm watching the game and I'm like, all right, we're keeping it close. We're just going to keep it at 13. And they can't even keep it to 13. The hard part is that so much of what the Spurs do so much of what the Heat do is based on their amazing physicality, right? Their defense is based around their ability to close out after they trap the screen and roll. And they can't do that. They just don't have the gas to do that. And I don't know that they have a fallback plan, and I don't know if Eric Spoelstra can implement one that's going to slow the Spurs down.
Yeah, and you talked about them getting more from guys like Mario Chalmers and Rashard Lewis. They need to get more from Dwayne Wade because he was horrible in Game 4. They need to get more from Chris Bosh, who shot the ball a little bit more effectively in Game 4, but Game 3 only took 4 shot attempts. Like they got to get more from the only person on their team who's shown up so far this series is LeBron James.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, in Game 1, he unfortunately had to sit out the last 4 minutes of that game due to injury. In Game 2, he exploded, and they won that game. Mm-hmm. Game 3, it was pretty much out of hand before he could even have an impact, and the same with Game 4.
Yeah.
But Game 4, he tried to make an impression by scoring 19 points in that third quarter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So you're starting to see that the problem is
bigger than
just the role players.
It extends to everybody except LeBron James.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the hard part, I think, now is that the Heat are so accustomed to having, well, especially Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh is not accustomed to stepping up, and I don't know that he can do that now. I don't know if he can go back to that guy that he was in Miami. I don't know if he can go, or excuse me, in Toronto. I don't know if he can step up and be that aggressive guy, although we did see some of that. Like, he was taking the ball to the rim, I want to say in Game 4 or in Game 5, in a way that I haven't seen before, and the way that we really need to. But frankly, yes, those guys need to step up. But if the role players don't step up and hit threes, then there is no chance that Miami can really win. You need to hit threes. Without opening up the key, LeBron and Dwayne Wade really have no room to operate. They cannot affect the Spurs defense because they're just going to pack the paint. So the role players have to step up and start hitting some outside shots, or basically the Miami Heat are done for.
All right, so let's assume, this is a big assumption, that he do go on to move to these finals. So that changes quite a bit. Oh, are you hearing an echo over there, Adam?
Huge echo now, yeah.
Did the echo go away?
A little bit. It got smaller.
Okay, hopefully that'll be better. But what you're seeing with the Heat struggling in these finals, so if we assume that they lose these finals, how does that affect their offseason? And the big rumor right now is Carmelo Anthony potentially potentially joining the Heat. And Donnie has a good point to bring up, talking about how you need to build your team differently now, and that having a big three and having three guys tie up the majority of your salary cap is not good for a roster. Well, now they're talking about getting 4 big salary guys tying up the roster. So what do you think about Carmelo joining the Heat, Adam?
I'm fine with it. I don't think it's a realistic proposal. I don't think it is in any way something that's going to happen. I think it's something that's fun to talk about, but given the cap holds that they have, I basically saw a breakdown of it on Reddit that makes me think it's incredibly unlikely. If he does, awesome. I think he'll have a lot of fun. I think it'll be a great team. I think it'll be wonderful. I don't buy into the idea that players need to go against each other. I think players should play where they want to play and play with who they enjoy playing with. And if Carmelo wants to join the Heat and have a great time, I think he's a great, well, it would be interesting from a tactical standpoint in the sense that LeBron would need to play the 3 and Carmelo the 4 and Chris the 5. Chris Bosh the 5. I'm not sure exactly how they work that out, so you need some position switching. But it would be great to compensate for fading Dwayne Wade, because he is absolutely gassed, and we certainly need something to step in for that. Because although Dwayne Wade has been shooting threes really well in the playoffs, it doesn't look like he's really intentionally adding that aspect to his game, which is what he needs as his body begins to age, basically. So getting somebody to compensate for Dwayne Wade's lack of production would be a really good idea. But I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think we're ever going to see it happen, but it's fun to talk about.
If this happened, Charles Barkley says it would be a travesty. Do you agree with Charles?
Absolutely disagree with Charles. That if it were, why does he think it would be a travesty? Does he think it would be a travesty because one team would have 4 of the best 30 players in the league? Would it be because 4, or would it be because 4 players from a younger generation got the chance to exercise an option that he never did?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think he's got an issue with it because these guys are in the primes of their careers, yet let's say all of them are. Well, Dwayne's on the tail end of his prime.
He's not in the prime of his career. No.
But with all these guys in the primes of their careers, I think he's got an issue with them not wanting to compete against each other, which to me is kind of BS because there's still plenty of other players that they need to compete against. And there's still no guarantee that a team comprised of those 4 guys would win a championship.
Yeah, because before we even get into the fact that LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony play the same position, who are the other 7 guys that are on the team?
Well, yeah, that's the salary cap thing that Adam was talking about.
Yeah,
there.
because right, so they would. I think all 4 of those guys would have to opt out of the current contract, of which we all know Carmelo is going to do. Apparently, he met with the Knicks last night, and there's nothing positive came that he was going to stay with the Knicks. So all 4 of them have to restructure the contract. Somebody, I think SB Nation did a whole spreadsheet of all this. Even if all of them, if you were to pay all 4 of them between $14 and $15 million, well, that's $60 million right there. Norris Cole is the only one that has a contract for next season. I think either Chris Anderson, 1 or 2 of Chris Anderson and Mario Chalmers could have the option to opt in. We know Shane Battier is going to retire. They already used their amnesty, and even still, all those guys are. None of those guys are playing particularly well right now. So, like you said, even if the slim chance that Carmelo Anthony went to the Knicks July 3rd, or went to Miami July 3rd, who are the rest of the guys gonna be?
Well, so that speaks to the sacrifice of what they are willing to do.
Yeah.
Because $14 to $15 million annually for those guys is already a huge pay cut for all of them. They'd all be taking, about 75% of what they could actually make. But it's still not enough to fill out the roster. So they'd have to take even a bigger pay cut. You'd have to pay those guys in the $12 million range, each of them, in order to have enough money to fill out the rest of your roster. The funny thing to me about this whole situation is that they're talking about putting together 4 of the biggest names in the game today on one team. And I think it's all a reaction to the fact that a team like the Spurs can hand it to them in the finals. They have 3 of the biggest names, and they can't keep up with the Spurs right now. So what's the solution? Let's go get a 4th big name so that we can hopefully keep up with the Spurs again next year. What do you think, Adam?
I think you're overstating the Heat's interest in Carmelo. I think why would you not add Carmelo, right? I mean, if he's available and he wants to play and everybody's on board, I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't add him. But yeah, they certainly need to find a way to bolster their bench, and that's hard to do. On the other hand, I don't know. To me, this strikes at the heart of the grown versus bought idea. That San Antonio grew their team, they drafted well, which they did. They drafted well, but they also got really lucky in drafting Tim Duncan. And there's nothing wrong with buying a team. That's how the NBA works. You pay people to come and play for you, whether you develop the talent or not. So if Carmelo wants to come play and they can make it happen, I don't see any reason that they shouldn't do it. Does that actually deal with the issues that they're seeing? No, it doesn't deal with the issues that they're seeing. In some ways, Miami is going through growing pains right now. They're going through the growing pains that San Antonio went through a decade ago, basically. How do you stay competitive on a regular basis and put yourself in a position to win all the time? One of the quotes from Game 5 was that Greg Popovich, about the Spurs, was that Greg Popovich talks to his team about winning more than he does about losing. Winning consistently is much more difficult than losing consistently. So the Heat are learning how to win consistently and stay competitive and put themselves in position for a title every year. And they're doing that, but they're clearly gassed after doing it for 4 years. And so they're dealing with a new challenge of winning on a regular basis and finding ways in which they can continue to develop talent like Kawhi Leonard, like Patty Mills, and bolster that bench and have those players come in and make an impact. And I think they're doing that with a guy like Norris Cole, but they need to do it across the board through a larger through more positions.
Yeah, I don't buy the whole grown versus bought argument. I mean, who cares? I mean, so the Spurs have a ton of guys on their roster that didn't start off as San Antonio Spurs too.
Yeah, Boris Diaw, for instance.
Kawhi Leonard wasn't drafted by the Spurs.
True.
Although you could say he was drafted. But neither was Patty Mills, neither was Danny Green, neither was Boris Diaw. Like a ton of the guys on the Spurs. I mean, they have their big three was drafted by them, but they still filled out the roster through free agency. So that whole grown versus bought thing is overblown.
You know, a more intriguing question.
What's that?
Tim Duncan has a deadline of June 24th to either opt in or opt out.
Oh, Tim Duncan's good. Nobody's talking about the fact that he's got an opt out next season.
That's a better question as to what he's going to do, as opposed to.
So we talked about that a little bit, right? If they win a championship, what is the likelihood of both him and Ginobili retiring after this season? Because they're both old.
It depends. My thinking would be it would depend on how much they want to try to do something that they've never done before.
Repeat.
Which is repeat as champions. They don't need to. The two of them, and Popovich as well, they've all had successful careers. We all know about their success. It would be, winning the title would be a perfect way. If they were to, assuming they don't fuck it up and choke and blow this league.
F-bomb alert.
Yeah. Assuming they don't do that, then winning a fifth title for Duncan and Pop would be a perfect way to bookend great careers. And just depends on how much. I think it would depend on how much they want to try to do something that they haven't done yet. And I cannot even pretend to try to penetrate the enigma that is Tim Duncan.
Yeah, it's a weird situation to be in, right? I think it's a great way to end your career on a high note. And especially since you're not under contract for next season, or potentially not under contract for next season, I would seriously consider retirement. But I said the same thing about Ginobili last season, and he came back and had a rejuvenated season. So, who knows? I kind of want to pivot here now, guys, and bring up the subject that just won't go away.
It won't go away because we're talking about it.
Well, Adam, do you have an update here? You were following this a little bit closer and a little bit better than I think we were. So do you have an update now? What's going on with Donald Sterling?
So, the whirlwind that is Donald Sterling, current owner of the LA Clippers, he has not been ousted yet, has reversed course once again in dizzying fashion and decided to sue the NBA. He has also taken his wife to court to determine what say he has in the sale of his basketball team that he, quote, spent 33 years building. I guess building, according to Donald Sterling, means running into the ground. They talk funny in Los Angeles. Maybe you guys can give me some feedback on that. So there is going to the judge has granted a 4-day trial to determine exactly who owns the Clippers. Because if you haven't been following the drama, the soap opera that is the sale of the Los Angeles Clippers, the Sterling Family Trust, which I believe actually may own the Clippers, was run by Donald Sterling until he was ruled mentally incompetent by 2 doctors who said that he had dementia, which he disputes. So the ownership of the trust is now in dispute, and they're going to court to settle that, to figure that out. So there's a 4-day trial. I believe it's 4 days. The outcome of that will determine who owns the Clippers and whether they get sold or not. Now, if Donald Sterling is ruled mentally incompetent, does not own the trust, then Shelley Sterling, his wife, his estranged wife, it should be said, his estranged wife, can go ahead with the sale of the Clippers to former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer for a record-setting $2 billion. If, however, Donald Sterling is not ruled mentally incompetent, or that diagnosis doesn't hold up, and he is deemed to be fit to run the Sterling Family Trust, I assume he will not sell to Ballmer. And that he will continue to own the team. That is separate from the lawsuit that he is now taking against the NBA. And according to an ally of Donald Sterling today, his private investigators have dug up dirt on NBA heads of the NBA and the NBA organization. So it's going to be. I thought that he would eventually retreat and surrender, and Donald Sterling does not give an F. You can fill in the other three letters. He's about to go to war with the NBA. He has the money to do it. He's worth over $30 billion or something like that. He's got a lot of money. He can go to war with the NBA. And not only that, he can do what I would consider like nuclear war, in the sense that he's going to make it dirty. He's going to bring out everybody's secrets, apparently, because, and why shouldn't he? The guy had a private conversation spilled out into public in the most toxic fashion, forcing him to sell one of his most profitable dividends. So I don't see that he has any reason now, because what can he lose with the NBA? He has no reason to back down, and he has no reason not to do what they did to him, more or less. So I thought the ride was almost over with the approved sale to Ballmer. It is just beginning.
This just brings me back to a moment a few weeks ago when we all thought this was over, when they first announced that there was a bidding war and that Steve Ballmer had won that bid at $2 billion. It seemed like we were going to be able to brush past all of this, and sure, there was going to be some legal business to deal with, but Donald Sterling has turned this thing into a three-ring circus by constantly changing his mind. You can get whiplash just by trying to follow how many times he's changed course during this whole thing. And it just reminds me, Adam, of how you were still in favor of the league voting even after they had agreed to sell the team to Ballmer.
Yeah.
And, man, I wish they would have done just exactly that. They were scheduled to vote June 3rd to vote on whether or not they would oust Sterling as an owner. And if they had done that, then they would have been able to move forward with their own sale of the team. Sure, they would have had to deal with other legal stuff.
Yeah.
But having to worry about whether or not Shelley Sterling has the power to do what she's doing, having to worry about Donald Sterling agreeing to the sale and then taking that back, and just all this flip-flop, they really should just vote the guy out at this point.
Yeah. The two of you talked about that a couple of weeks ago when the Ballmer show was announced, that they should hold the votes for Sterling, anyways, instead of skipping that vote and moving to approval of the sale. So basically, all this stuff that's happened is where I thought we would be right now, which is minus the votes of removal from Sterling and a buyer for the Clippers. Like, I thought we would be caught in a legal mess for a long time, but after, I thought the legal mess would have transpired after they officially terminated the ownership of the Sterlings.
Well, I think it's going to be fascinating. This is a speedy trial that he's going to have. It's a jury trial, and it's only 4 days according to the judge. So the outcome of that trial is going to determine exactly how long the miasma that we find ourselves in will last. If Shelley Sterling is deemed to have control of the trust, then there won't be any. I mean, the Clippers will be sold to Ballmer, lickety split. And basically, once Shelley Sterling became an ally for the NBA rather than fighting the NBA thought that was going to be a lot easier. She clearly must have said, "Look, I have these documents. I can sell this team very quickly, as long as you let me, sort of stay within the team in some way." Because there have been rumors that Shelley will maintain a position within the Clippers organization, which she has said from the start.
The legal term is owner's operandi or something like that. So basically, she maintains a very small percentage, and she can show up whenever she wants.
So if she's ruled to be in charge of the trust, then that at least the sale will go through quickly. The suit against the NBA and the dirt that Donald is digging, and isn't going to stop, right? Because if she is deemed to be in charge of the trust, he only has more reason to go after the NBA. So it's going to be really...
Part of you did a good job of summing up everything that happened a few minutes ago. But the one thing that you did that I do want to add to that is part of Shelley's agreement with the NBA is indemnify.
Indemnify, that's right.
Against future lawsuits. So basically, what would happen, and Adam Silver reminded me of this on Thursday when he did an interview on NBA TV. Basically, what would happen is the NBA would be protected from any lawsuits coming from. The NBA would be protected by the Sterling Family Trust from any lawsuits coming from Donald Sterling. So Donald Sterling would be suing himself.
Yeah, but yes, and I did leave that out. Thank you for reminding us of that. What's interesting to me is not the lawsuit, right? Because that is essentially a closed loop. Any money that Donald Sterling could get from the NBA, he's essentially paying out to himself, since the Sterling Family Trust has to repay the NBA. What's interesting to me is the dirt that's going to come out from his private investigators, right? Like, that is really fascinating to me, because he's now essentially fighting fire with fire and getting personal, which is what Donald feels has happened to him in the beginning, and what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar pointed out, which is this is really unseemly, using somebody's personal recordings to oust them of property, is now maybe happening to Adam Silver, might be happening to Mark Cuban, might be happening to Rich DeVos, who we've already talked about, the current owner of the Orlando Magic, who is very anti-gay marriage and very homosexuality in general. So it'll be interesting now that he's been ousted from the Billionaires Club to see if he goes after them the way that he feels they've gone after him.
Well, and he's done that. He's hired investigators to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, though, whatever he uncovers through those investigations is a little bit different than getting caught on a recording with your pants down. Obviously, the NBA's reaction to anything that he finds in his investigation will only be taken with a grain of salt, because it's clearly the actions of a vengeful person.
Yeah.
Right. The problem that I have right now with that case that you mentioned, Adam.
Can I just interrupt?
Trial that is not scheduled to happen until July 7th.
Right. 5 weeks.
That's after the NBA draft.
Yeah.
That's after free agency begins. So players will still have this thing hanging over their head when they're making free agent decisions. The team will still have this over their head when they're making draft picks.
Yeah.
Like, this thing should have been taken care of, or at least resolved to some degree, so that you would understand what the state of the team would be going into those important off-season milestones. Yet we're not there yet.
No. We may not even be close to there yet.
Which, again, I'm sorry, Adam, I couldn't hear you.
No, well, one thing I want to say is that I disagree with what you're saying about the idea that information should be ignored because it's coming from a vengeful person. Because that's exactly where the information about Donald Sterling came from, right? So this goes back to what I consider to be the moral quandary of banning Donald Sterling for life for those statements. Those were released essentially by V. Stiviano because his wife was suing her for the property that Donald gave her. Those remarks were released by a vengeful person in the beginning. So the NBA should have acted on Sterling a long time ago, as the ESPN's Outside the Lines highlighted, and ESPN has been highlighting for years. They should have acted long ago. They took this opportunity to act now, long overdue. But the idea that we should ignore information because it's been released by a vengeful person, if that's true, then we should have ignored what happened with Donald Sterling in the first place, because it was released. It's not as though these sort of came to light. They were released by his mistress, who was more or less releasing these tapes because she was getting sued by his estranged wife. So I don't think that we can't ignore dirt dug up by Donald Sterling simply because Donald Sterling dug it up out of vengeance. Otherwise, that completely invalidates what we did what the NBA did the first time with Donald Sterling.
I disagree with that to a degree. And here's where I disagree with it. If Donald Sterling is able to find a recording that he didn't come up with on his own, but somebody else's recording of another owner saying something as dumb as he did, then I'll go along with it. But if he's digging into people's past and trying to find something incriminating on them, clearly it's being filtered through the lens of somebody who's been burned. What Vistiviano did was just put she told him she was recording it. She recorded a conversation between the two of them that exposed Sterling for the bigot that he is. So I guess I would have to see what I'd have to see what Sterling comes up with. And if he comes up with something that exposes somebody this badly for the bigot that they are, then yeah, I think I would expect the NBA to react in a similar fashion. But if all he finds are, some bones in somebody's closet, something like that, where you can question it because of the source, then that's the difference between what's happening to Sterling and what he would eventually try to get to happen to some other owner.
Well, it'll be really fascinating. There's a quote that says, "Behind every great fortune is a great crime." So the people who own NBA teams have pretty great fortunes. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up.
Yeah, I guess you could say it'd be interesting. Interesting is not the word I'd use.
I think it's fascinating. I think watching the NBA at war with itself is a fascinating experience. It's not often that you get to see somebody burned in a billionaires club. And, the only two more fascinating people than Donald Sterling would be Mark Cuban and Dan Gilbert, owners of the Dallas Mavericks and Cleveland Cavaliers, respectively. I think
Clay Bennett too. Right the day after those tapes came out, and I forget who wrote about it, but somebody wrote about the example. They talked about Rich DeVoe and contributing to anti-gay marriage groups. They talked about they mentioned Clay Bennett doing something, whatever it was that Clay Bennett do outside of moving the team.
Outside of stealing my NBA team?
Outside of moving the Sonics to Oklahoma City. They also talked about somebody else. Just, like you said, behind every great fortune is a great crime. Just doing morally gray things. Nothing as bad as housing discrimination. Nothing as bad as refusing to pay former employees. Nothing as bad as sexual harassment. But just things that are morally, that I think are legally okay, but morally
reprehensible.
Yeah. So, and I think those would be the types of things that Sterling would turn up. Is the stuff that's in the stuff that if you're going to grade him on a scale would be less bad than what he's done. Forget what he said.
Yeah.
Forget what he said on the tapes. Whatever. But the housing discrimination and the other stuff, that stuff is bad. But and then I think what he would turn up from the other 29 owners would be stuff that is legally okay, but ethically maybe not.
Yeah.
If this turns into a reality show drama,
I think
I'm going to turn off the NBA.
Yeah.
There's no way I could pay attention if it becomes this personal slugfest.
Yes.
And it becomes all about this drama. I could care less. I want to watch the players on the court. Yes. And if all of this other noise starts drowning out what's being accomplished on the court, then I have to reevaluate my fandom.
So you didn't care that apparently Kevin Durant and the game had Twitter beef?
I didn't even know they did.
Yeah.
I really don't care.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't know why anybody else would either, but it's somebody at Bleacher Report thought it was newsworthy.
Well, I disagree with you.
That's another thing. Consider the source, Bleacher Report.
Yeah, I disagree completely. I would be fascinated to watch billionaires go to war against each other. It probably happens more often than we think, but it's not covered the way it'll be covered in the NBA. So I'd be fascinated.
You watch Basketball Wives, don't you, Adam?
What's that?
You watch Basketball Wives.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
Just some reality show about, I won't say wives of basketball players, but women that are somehow related to basketball players.
Wives and girlfriends?
Yeah. Well,
I don't, but if I had cable, I probably would. Sounds awesome.
Hey, at least he's
Yeah.
honest about it.
yeah. All right, guys. I think it's that time of the week. Let's get into these performances and embarrassments of the week. And Adam, I'll start with you. Who's your performance of the week?
Well, I'm going to go with LeBron in Game 2. But you know what? I'm going to give credit to the Spurs. I'm just going to say the first half of Game 3 was otherworldly. I've never seen a performance like that. They went 8 for 8 or something like that on three-pointers. They were 100% on three-pointers in the first half of Game 3. It was a magnificent performance of basketball. I want to give credit where credit is due. That is a well-coached team. That is a team with a focus. That is a team with a team mentality. I saw a statistic on Reddit today. The San Antonio Spurs have passed the ball 363 more times than the Miami Heat have, and that is showing in the way that they're scoring points. Every aspect of their game is happening at a very high level right now, and it showed in the first half of Game 3. Set a record for field goal percentage in the first half, over 75%. The San Antonio Spurs played great basketball, and I want to give them credit for that.
Lamont, who's your performance of the week?
Spurs have been great. The thing that showed a statistic in Game 4 where throughout the playoffs, the Spurs have assisted on 68% of their shots, and that brought a tear to my eye. My performance of the week, we're going to go to the NBA sister league, the WNBA. My performance of the week goes to Skylar Dickens, who last night against the Sparks, she scored 22 points, including the game-winning shot. So shout out to Miss Dickens.
Hey, that's going into unknown territory for the People's Court.
Yeah.
WNBA for performance of the week. My performance of the week, let's stick with these finals. Because Kawhi Leonard has turned in 2 absolute gems the past 2 games. Game 3, a career-high 29 points. Followed that up in Game 4 with 20 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. That was a mouthful just to get through all of those numbers. Kawhi Leonard, the beast. He's my performance of the week. Adam, who's your embarrassment of the week?
Well, I want to give it to the Miami Heat in general for the last 2 games. The other 14 players on the Heat besides LeBron James. But the epitome, in my opinion, of the lackluster performance from the Heat has been not Mario, but Wario Chalmers. Wario Chalmers. For those who don't know, Super Mario Brothers, Mario has an alter ego. His nemesis is Wario. And that's who we're getting from Mario Chalmers right now, shooting less than 25% for the series. And his elbow on Tony Parker was absolutely the epitome of classless basketball. I cannot state how strongly I disagree with the way he is playing, with his choices, with the basketball. He is not contributing anything, and he's being an anchor. He's dragging the rest of the team down. And so my embarrassment of the week goes to Wario Chalmers.
I will say one thing about that elbow. After that moment, I think the Heat went on a run and actually won that game.
Yeah, it actually sparked them.
It turned the tide a little bit.
It actually sparked the Heat to victory because what happened after that elbow? Tony Parker
missed those free throws.
Missed the free throws. They keep possession. Duncan gets fouled. He misses his free throws. They come back. Chris Bosh hits the go-ahead 3-point shot. So they instead of having a potential 6-point lead, they have a 2-point deficit. Miami has a 2-point lead. So yeah. He contributed in a good way, though. It was unintentionally good.
Yeah. I think that may have spurred, pun intended, the Spurs on in Game 3, of course. Maybe he'd still want that elbow back. Lamont, who's your embarrassment of the week?
Grant Land and ESPN's Bill Simmons.
Yeah.
In the post-game show for Game 4, they come back. They do the post-game in conjunction with SportsCenter, and they come back from, I think, an interview with Kawhi Leonard and Stuart Scott, and then they go back to the group that's in Miami, and Sage Steele gives a question to the other 3 and says, Bill, you get first shot, and he responds, "Oh, I get to speak now. It's been like 10 minutes." Shut up. Which prompted a pretty hysterical eye roll from Stagefield. This happened on the air. So either Bill Simmons is a gigantic egomaniac, or he is a bad comedian. Either way,
just have both.
Yeah, I think he's both.
Either way, it was bad.
I'll take C for all of the above.
There you go.
My embarrassment of the week is Dwayne Wade. Game 4, he just didn't show up. That was a must-win game for the Heat and their second-best player, and I think highest-paid player. At least up there. I think he's making a little bit more money than LeBron and Bosh. I could be wrong about that, though. He just didn't show up. He had a pitiful game. 3 out of 13 from the field. How many turnovers? I don't even know how many turnovers, but a ton of turnovers as well.
He had 5.
Yeah, he looked bad in Game 4, and they can't have a repeat performance if they expect to win Game 5. They need him to show up and produce like the future Hall of Famer we know him to be.
Yeah, somebody. He's been bad defensively too. Somebody posted an 11-minute clip of bad Dwayne Wade defense.
Oh.
Not from the entire season or not even the entire playoffs. Nope, these last 4 games, 11 minutes worth of bad defense.
Yeah, he got the James Harden treatment.
He sure did.
Well, that's fun. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
I'm good.
No. We suck again.
We suck again. Thank you for bearing with us through our technical difficulties and just all around poor effort. But thank you for joining us. Our next episode, Saturday, June 21st, we'll probably be back at our normal time at 11:30 a.m. next week. It may be the final episode of the season because I think regardless of if this goes 5 games or 7 games, we'll be all done with basketball by the time our next episode rolls around. Am I right about that?
Should be. Game 5 tomorrow, Game 2, Game 6 if there's a Game 6 Tuesday, if there's a Game 7 Thursday.
So, only 1 episode left in the playoffs for us. We may come back with an episode to wrap up the entire season. We'll see if that happens or not. We'll keep you up to date on our Twitter account at People's Court FM. You can leave us a message. 424-ADJOURN. That's 424-235-7633. Or you can check out our blog to catch up on any episodes you may have missed. http://thepeoplescourt.fm. And if there's nothing else, fellas, I'm going to call this one.
I say we can call it.
Court is adjourned.